Thank you. Yes, I join Greg in thanking you for joining us this evening. We're fortunate to have some distinguished guests in the audience too, as well as here on the platform. So I'll look forward to extending the discussion to the audience later on. But first, let me map out the territory that we want to cover tonight. We're beginning with the assumption that there is a strong case for public broadcasting in Australia. The ABC may have its critics, but opinion polls suggest that it enjoys widespread support and that if a government wanted to scrap it, it would do so at its peril. We don't intend tonight to deal with some of the questions that you hear all the time, which go to partisan politics, or we don't intend to give any advice to the Treasurer, Joe Hockey, as he forms his budget. Those things tonight are of no particular concern for the Centre for Independent Studies, which likes to keep well away from matters partisan, of course. The CIS does, of course, however, have a very strong interest in lean government and the efficient delivery of public services. So it's from that perspective that we approach the discussion tonight. For the provision of public broadcasting, like the provision of public health or education, must be shown to be contributing to the common good. So the issue tonight is not so much whether the ABC is doing a good job, but what job we want the ABC to do. What unique service can the public broadcasting provide that cannot be left to the market? Is the ABC's purpose clearly articulated enough in its charter and in the Act, which dates back to 1983, or does it need to be looked at? Does it need to be renewed? And what suggestions might we have for reinvigorating the ABC in order that it may provide an even better service, an even more startlingly good service for the Australian public? I'll introduce the speakers a little as we go along, but the pattern for tonight is that we'll have a brief, we'll each say our piece, about 8 or 10 minutes, and then I'll open up, we'll have some discussion within the panel here, and that I hope will move seamlessly out to the floor. And I'll ask you just, perhaps exceptionally tonight, I mean, given the topic, we'd like to hear your views as well as your questions, but if you can bear in mind the limited time and keep them as concise as possible, that would be a great help. A bit about myself, I'm a former editor at the Australian newspaper, and I now write a weekly column for them. And I published a book last year called The Lucky Culture, the longest chapter in that book, and the one which took me by far the longest to research and write was the chapter on the ABC. It's an excellently researched chapter, by the way, and I happen to have some copies outside at the special anniversary price of $30, just by the by. And I'm currently a visiting fellow at the Centre for Independent Studies, and also working on my next book, which is a history of intellectual folly. I'm playing the role of both chairman and participant in tonight's debate. Like everybody else who grew up in Britain as part of my generation, I was brought up with the BBC and nothing much else, beginning with Listen with Mother, going on to Bill and Ben, Blue Peter, Doctor Who, Top of the Pops. I added, I think, considerably to my education by watching Kenneth Clarke's Civilization and Bronowski's The Ascent of Man, and then laughed myself silly through every episode of Monty Python the very first time it was broadcast. I got my first cheque from the BBC in 1979 for £5 when I was a student at Exeter University, and I reported for them for their regional breakfast show, Morning Sow West, on the Springboks tour and a protest that the students had decided to mount. When I left university, all I wanted to do really was to join the BBC. And after a number of failed attempts, I managed to get a foot in the door as a studio manager for the BBC World Service. And I well remember that moment when I spoke my very first words live to air from a basement studio in Bush House in front of a huge World War II era desk with huge baker-like knobs, 2 in the morning, and I said, "This is the external service of the BBC from London. The following broadcast is in Mandarin Chinese." I'd practiced for about 2 days. There was a pronounced sense at the World Service, of course, about what public broadcasting was about, and indeed in the broader BBC, I believe, at that stage. Brendan might bring us up to date whether that's still the case some 25 years after I handed in my pass. But the great Reithian idea of a cultural institution that occupied the very centre of public life was much easier to achieve for the BBC, where they had a virtual monopoly. They had a complete monopoly for 30 odd years. I was 9, for instance, before I heard my first radio commercial. It was for Golden Wonder crisps, and it came from the pirate station Radio Caroline, which used to broadcast from a ship in the North Sea. The ABC, on the other hand, faced commercial competition right from the very start. Yet in 1932, the government of the day decided to copy the Reithian model as best they could on a very limited budget by setting up the Australian Broadcasting Commission. From those very early days, though, I sensed that there was a lack of clarity about the ABC's purpose. During the second reading of the ABC Bill on March 9th, 1932, the Postmaster General, James Fenton, was imagining the ABC as it might become. It's anticipated that under the Empire Broadcasting System, it'll be possible for naked blacks to listen in the jungle to the world's best operas. We may also reach the period when brown-skinned Indians will be able to dance to one of England's best orchestras, and when fur-clad Canadians in some distant snowbound outpost may listen to a description of the running of the English Derby. Extensive use will be made of the Blatnophone recording apparatus. Whole programmes may be bottled and put to air at whatever hour is most suitable for any particular part of the empire. Fast forward 82 years to the bottling of Peppa Pig. Imported from the UK, broadcast on the ABC's preschool digital channel and downloaded, I'm assured, 19 million times last year on ABC iView. What are we to make of Peppa? Not a native animal, I note, like the muddle-headed wombat. Oh no, it's the face of a highly successful independent British production house, Entertainment One, which earns well over £1 billion a year. You might be interested to hear that the Peppa Pig quilt cover, incidentally, will be on sale for $39.99 from ABC shops in June. In Britain, Peppa Pig is broadcast proudly on the free-to-air commercial Channel 5 without a single penny of public support. Here, in Australia, she has a contract with a taxpayer-funded organisation, an institution that its managing director aspires to make the babysitter of choice for every parent in Australia. So let us return to first principles before we beat up on poor old Peppa and ask, is this what the ABC was put on earth to do? What possible public purpose could justify hogging taxpayers' money to fund this cheeky little grunter, turning it into a preschool celebrity while flogging its ephemeral merchandise through the back door? In these fiscally restrained times, shouldn't we be allowed to ask, should this little piggy be going to market? Tonight I want to argue that Peppa Pig is symptomatic of a public broadcaster that's lost its way. It's spending too much of its annual stipend on content that can either be seen on other channels or is barely worth watching or listening to at all. The 82-year-old institution is an established part of Australian life, for sure. Managing Director Mark Scott may be right when he predicts that abolishing the ABC would lead to civil insurrection. The corporation is suffering, however, from a profound identity crisis. It's uncertain about its place in an increasingly crowded media landscape. It's unnerved by its critics, and it's unsure of its future. In an age of media abundance, the justification for investing $1 billion a year of scarce cultural capital in a single institution needs to be thought through. The last serious attempt to define the reason for its existence was in 1982, when the Australian Broadcasting Bill was prepared on the recommendation of the Dix Review. Back then, the ABC had just one television channel. It broadcast for 14 hours a day. There were only 4 others. The internet was science fiction. Digital broadcasting was a long way over the horizon. Social media was known then as talkback radio, and programs were recorded on degradable magnetic tape. The technical ability to screen a program across the nation was barely 10 years old. That's to screen live in those days. Only 10 years since the coaxial cable network had been finished. And colour television was even younger. So it seems to me that the ABC is operating on an analogue charter in the digital age. It gives the broadcaster precious little guidance as to what it should be doing. I have here a copy of the Royal Charter for the Continuance of the British Broadcasting Corporation, issued by Command of Her Majesty the Queen in October 2006. It is, as you see, a substantial document. Has 37 pages in it, contains more than 37,000 words. Here's just a few of them. The ABC exists to serve the public interest. Sorry, the BBC exists to serve the public interest. The BBC's main objective is the promotion of its public purposes. The public purposes of the BBC are as follows: sustaining citizenship and civil society, promoting education and learning, stimulating creativity and cultural excellence, representing in the UK, its nations, its regions and communities, and so on and so forth. Big ideals. And that's just part of it. You've got supporting it this, which is an agreement between the government, between the minister and the British Broadcasting Corporation, setting out in addition to the charter what it's supposed to do. And this runs to 27,000 words, 74 pages. It stipulates, for instance, that the BBC Trust, that's the equivalent of the Board of Directors, must publish a statement on the impact of the BBC upon the wider market. It says that the Executive Board should prepare and publish regular policy statements on its programming. It says that the BBC must do all it can to ensure that controversial subjects are dealt with adequately and accurately and impartially. And so to the ABC Charter. Section 6 of the Australian Broadcasting Act of 1983. I printed it in large format, by the way, so it'll fill out the page. It's just 350 words. There's no clear statement of its public purpose. There are very few obligations for the ABC to set out its programming policy or to report on how it's doing. There's no clear direction about how to avoid crowding out the private sector market. In other words, the ABC is invited to simply make it up as it goes along. And let me make it clear, I'm under no illusion that the BBC is necessarily living up to its charter, nor am I convinced that we need 40,000 words to tell us what the ABC's role in life is. I suspect that Tony Abbott's deregulation czar, Josh Frydenberg, would have something to say about that. That said, however, I do think that we need to think much more carefully about what the ABC is supposed to do. The case for a new inquiry on the scale of the Dix inquiry as a prelude to redrafting the Act and the Charter is unanswerable in my view. We need a robust, constructive national debate.